Really just set this up today.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Milliken from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and it is a real treat to have a very distinguished group of authors here with us today. Starting with, I'll start with the most obscure, which is a little-known writer named Lee Child, who now I love the Akashic bio here. It says Lee Child was fired and out of work when he hatched a harebrained scheme to write a best-selling novel, thus saving his family from ruin. Killing Floor went on to launch the New York Times #1 best-selling Jack Reacher series with over 100 million books sold in 49 languages. Forbes calls it the strongest brand in publishing. The series has spawned 2 feature films and an upcoming Amazon Prime Video series. The Nicotine Chronicles, which we're going to be discussing today, is his latest work. And then 2 of the contributors for this wonderful anthology are here today. Robert Arellano is the award-winning author of 6 novels, including Curse the Names, Fast Eddie, King of the Bees, and Don DeMaio of La Plata, which I understand is kind of a modern retelling of Don Quixote, which I've read a couple of your books, the Havana Libre and Havana Lunar, of course. Wonderful writer. And then Bernice McFadden is the author of 9 critically acclaimed novels, including Sugar, Loving Donovan, Nowhere is a Place, The Warmest December, Gathering of Waters, which was New York Times Editor's Choice and one of the 100 notable books of 2012, Glorious, and The Book of Harlan, which was the winner of a 2017 American Book Award and the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work in Fiction. She's a 4-time Hurston Wright Legacy Award finalist, as well as the recipient of 4 awards with the BCALA. Praise Song for the Butterflies is her latest novel. Is that up to date?
It's actually 15 novels, but that's okay.
Johnny, you got to update that. But you know, I before we get started here, and I know you're all on the same page. I just wanted to give a real shout out to Johnny Temple and Akashic Books, and you know, he really, you know, in the publishing world, at least from my perspective, he really sets the bar for integrity, honesty, exquisite taste, and you know, his contribution to the publishing world, in my opinion, can't be overstated. And I love also his the motto that he came up with for his press, which is the reverse gentrification of the literary world. What a great line and a great philosophy. So, Nicotine Chronicles, we're talking about today, which comes out in trade paperback and in hardcover. We have some of the hardcover and the trade paperback. Is the latest in a series. It's funny, I was thinking about it. We have the Heroin Chronicles, the Cocaine Chronicles, the Marijuana Chronicles, the Speed Chronicles, and by far, would you agree, the most addictive substance of all of these, the Nicotine Chronicles?
I would agree.
Yeah.
So I just thought I would kind of turn it over to Lee, who edited the book, and maybe talk a little bit about you know, how you organized the book, you know, the art of creating an anthology, because there's a real, as I was telling them before we started here, there's a real art to creating a journey that the reader goes on through an anthology, and I think you've done a tremendous job in doing that. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I will. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different things, and this is the book, which I think is just the most magnificent jacket. Whoever designed this jacket deserves an award. It's just really great. And I want to first of all say thank you, a big, huge thank you to Bernice and Robert for being here tonight and for contributing to the anthology, because that is exactly why I love to get involved with these things. Because normally what you do is, we all of us, I think, are so busy and so occupied in our own lane, not through any desire of our own, but we just end up working on our stuff and promoting and then working on the next thing and promoting, and you raise your head and you suddenly realize 2 years have gone by and you haven't really talked to any authors or any writers outside of your own immediate circle. So you get an anthology like this, and it gives you a chance to play what is essentially fantasy football. You think, all right, you know what the subject is. Who do you want? And of course, you don't always get who you want, because out of every 20 invitations you send out, maybe only, I don't know, 12 or 15 people are interested. A lot of people are say no, too busy or whatever. And I felt, especially with this one, because I contributed to the Cocaine Chronicles, no problem at all, and the Marijuana Chronicles. You know, both of those are food groups to me, and I was very happy to, I did it with no reservation at all. But then when Johnny said, what about the Nicotine Chronicles? I was slightly hesitant, because I felt, you know, smoking cigarettes now, for all the fact that it's a delightfully enjoyable thing to do, it has a very bad reputation, and it's looked down upon, and it's slightly dirty or something. So I was worried about getting involved slightly, and I was also worried about other people wanting to get involved. So that's my first question, really, to say Bernice first. Did you have any misgivings about this because it was cigarettes?
Not at all. I'm a smoker. I come from a family of smokers. So it was actually very thrilling for me to actually just sit and think about all types of cigarettes, all types of tobacco, and try to figure how I was going to include as many cancer sticks as possible in the story.
Excellent. Well, you succeeded. And we'll come back to that, because you're very acute about brands of cigarettes, I thought. I thought that was, you know, that's a whole subculture that we need to explore. Robert, what about you? Did you feel any reluctance because of the subject matter?
I was thrilled immediately when Johnny Temple reached out, and when I heard that you were going to edit the anthology, Lee. And I think being a Cuban American let me really take that liberal understanding of nicotine to mean cigars, chew. Heck, I know there's even some vape stories in here. So I didn't think twice, even with 2 young, impressionable kids and all this. I thought I was going to contribute a cigar story at first, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. So I went right back to cigarettes, and I'm trying to taper off now.
Yeah.
You sure were prescient too, Robert, in terms of what's been going on up there.
Sure. I couldn't imagine. I said it here in my hometown area of Ashland, Oregon, and of course we had some wildfires 2 weeks ago that were in the news, and the story's kind of chillingly timely.
Yeah, that's my next question, actually, and I've been asking this to every writer I can. I mean, Robert's had double issues because of the wildfires, but the lockdowns, the isolation and the distancing, you know, I don't want to know your medical histories or anything like that, but purely as artists, how has that affected you? Is it good? Is it bad? Some people I've talked to have been fantastically productive. Others have been unfocused and distracted and unable to concentrate and watched a lot of television. What was your experience as a whole?
I'm completely distracted and absolutely binging on streaming services. I did manage to get out a nice essay and a proposal, and that's all I had in me. and that took. I got locked down March. I flew from New Orleans into New York. And so I was in New York from March until August, and now I'm back in New Orleans. And that's all I was able to get out. And people kept saying, oh, take this time and you could write and you could write. And it's like, it's not that simple. Because my focus was all over the place, not sleeping, certainly opening the refrigerator 20 times too many a day. It's just a weird time to be alive, I guess.
It sure
and to
is.
be alive and trying to create.
My personal experience was, it was the first time in my life. I mean, I have a place out west in Wyoming, which is where I went for lockdown. And I was there in that house, in one house, in one bed for 6 consecutive months. And I worked out retrospectively, I have never done that in my life, ever. I mean, certainly not as an adult. And as a kid, you know, you think back, you're a kid, you're at home, yeah, but you go on a vacation, you get taken to see your grandma or something like that. So I'm pretty sure that I never spent 6 months consecutively in the same place. And I have now, and it was a strange kind of slow motion sort of life. And my work horizon shrank ridiculously to the point where, you know, if I did 2 emails a day, I would think, damn, that's a good day's work, and stop. You know, where else before you would do 200 things a day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sort of paralysis that, in a way, I enjoyed, although I worried that I'm becoming a psycho shut-in, you know, just completely isolated and antisocial, which is not a bad thing for a writer, but we do need stimulation. We need to meet and talk, hear language in random situations, which we obviously have not been able to do. Robert, I mean, before the world went on fire, I mean, how was it for you?
You know, I teach at Southern Oregon University. Go Raiders, and shout out to colleagues. We have a fine creative writing program here with the fiction writer Craig Wright and the poet Casey Mohammed. Okay, thank you for that. I think my students really kept me sane. It was spring break right when we all went into lockdown, and we had to scramble and figure out what we were going to do for the last 2.5 months of that academic year. And at first I kind of held it together, you know, for my own kids, but also for my students, thinking, well, I better just, you know, put on that game face, close my eyes and think of Brooklyn. But in fact, I'm learning now, after a bit of a summer break and now teaching again for the fall, it's really just the students are looking for community too. I spend a good 15 to 20 hours a week on Zoom, and I look forward to it now. I have a good ergonomic chair. I get up frequently, take breaks. I'm not afraid of doing a little yoga with 20, 25 students watching. And I just really am grateful to have that occupation, that day job. And I squeeze a little bit of writing in the morning times, but certainly it's been surreal. And we hope we get to do this in person at the Poisoned Pen next time when the I don't know what chronicles are next. We'll have to ask Johnny. I hope he asks us all to contribute.
Yeah, well, you know, there are two main series that he does. One is the So-and-So Noir,
Yeah.
which location-based and so on, and the other are the Chronicles, which are, yeah, exactly. I think I was actually in one Phoenix Noir, wasn't I? So
Yes, you were.
I remember that one very well. And then he does the Chronicles, which are the drug ones. So what's the next drug? You know, ecstasy, I suppose, or Molly, or something like that.
Ayahuasca.
Is alcohol too pedestrian?
Yeah, you know, don't you think alcohol has been done enough in literature largely? So I don't know what it's going to be. And the problem is, if it's ecstasy or something like that, that's after my time. I've never used that. You know, that's a kid thing. I think my daughter's too old for that now. So we've sort of run out of the mature drugs, so maybe we won't be able to do any more. What do you think about, after enduring this year, what strikes me is that, you know, 100 years ago there was the 1918 flu, and it almost never shows up in fiction. That if you read the great novels of the 20s and 30s, there's almost no mention of the Spanish flu, so-called, in 1918. And that leaves me the question, will we just ignore this when it's over, or will it be fodder for writing? What do you think, Bernice?
I think speaking for me personally, yes, this will absolutely end up in a piece of literature. I can't see myself not including it. I thought the same thing about 9/11, and that was what, 2001.
Yeah.
And I think it played a significant part in a 2006 novel of mine. So I don't see me skipping over this. And in fact, I went back and looked at my family line and looked at the death records for 1917, 18, 19 to try to figure out what family members I lost during the influenza. And I lost about, it looks like I lost about 6 in South Carolina. So I'm actually quite fascinated by this.
Yeah, I can totally believe that because the death toll was enormous, and it was a savage type of influenza. People were falling dead on the street. It was super dramatic. I'm not sure, it really interested me when you said the 5-year gap between 9/11 and when it showed up in the book, because I think that is essential. You've got to internalize it, think about it, and then see what comes out. I don't think you can do it too soon. What about you, Robert? You're going to write the great pandemic novel? Or actually, you're probably going to, if you had, it would have probably got singed by the wildfire.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
a wildfire novel instead.
I've been thinking about that one, and having already, with this short piece in the Nicotine Chronicles, dabbled in the wildfires as reality of the new abnormal. I really was caught off guard by your question, Lee. I don't know. I really realized that I don't want to think about it yet. I don't know how quite I could incorporate it, and I'm really very curious. If you don't mind, I'll just ask you, flip it back on you. Are you going to be writing about this pandemic in the next few years?
I very much doubt it. I mean, because I'm not a serious novelist. You know, I'm a thriller writer, and you've got to have something that is at least has the potential to be upbeat. You know, it's got to have. It can be an absolutely dire, terrible problem, but it's got to be solved in 400 pages, and it's got to leave people feeling exhausted and through the ringer, but feeling good essentially. And the problem with reality is that it doesn't work like that. You know, there isn't an end. It doesn't end after 400 pages. It drags on for a long, long time and sort of fizzles out. And so as meat for a thriller, I think it would be very difficult to do. Especially because, you know, the distancing. Bernice said she's been binging shows, and so have I. I mean, I've seen some great series, but it's so weird watching people. They're face to face. They're in bars together. It looks like it's a different world.
We're already indoctrinated, right? So when you see it, it's like they're together. How come they don't have a mask on? It's amazing how quickly that happened for us.
You know, what's interesting also, if I might jump in, is that when you read about just the parallels with the 1918 flu, you know, with the anti-masker movement at that time, and just we don't change much, do we?
We don't. People are very stubborn all the time. It's, you know, as authors, we suffer from that. There is nothing more stubborn and obstinate than the reading public. You can't make them do anything. You can't plan or push. It either happens or it doesn't. But we better, I'm sure Johnny Temple is watching in Brooklyn, so we better focus on the book with the magnificent cover, Johnny. We love the cover. 16 stories, 15 of them are good and one of them is mine. And so let's talk a little bit about the stories. It seems it's a great pair we got tonight because very different approaches. Robert's is longer, and it is like it's like a very compressed novel, in as much as, and it's noir, it's dark, it's dangerous, but it has the sort of trajectory and the sort of twist that you could expect in a novel, but it happens in a brief period of time. You know, not many pages. So how did you arrive at doing that form and structure for it?
Oh, you know, Johnny Temple has visited me here in Ashland, and there's an actual bar. It's the oldest continuing liquor license with a smoker's porch to boot, called Omar's here in Ashland. And I remember when I moved here 10 years ago, I said, this place is perfect for noir. I had already contributed to a couple of the noir collections, and the novels are billed as Cuban noir. And I just started, it was one of those things where you're just scribbling notes on the back of napkins. Truth is funnier, stranger, more entertaining than fiction. And I was getting so much material out of my new friends and neighbors. But I've been also trying to take a semi-autobiographical character, right? His name is Robbie Relleno. And instead of making him an academic like me, make him a detective. And then put all the psychodrama of a backbiting university department into a police department instead. And my closest coworker at the time, I hope he's here, I think he probably is, Rob Casserly, became Carl Rafferty. And I just said, what if the guy I trust more than anyone at my job deceived me? And it just spun its own thread from there.
Yeah, it was a great story, and like I said, it had all the elements of a true suspense novel, but extremely compact, and it had that trick that I absolutely cannot do with the short story, which is you set up a completely innocent opening. As you say, the guy is a perfectly decent guy, he's doing a perfectly decent job, he's got a good assistant that he's relying on, and he in fact gets handed an extra responsibility because of the way the funding is going to be routed. And it's, you know this is a decent guy doing the right things, but you know that it is going to be a disaster. You can feel you can feel it building up, and you're looking at the sequence of clues and you're wondering, how is this going to go wrong? You know it is going to go wrong, but how exactly?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I won't give any spoilers, but it was a very, very neat and compact piece of work. Whereas Beneath had this delightful, it was like setting up a scenario, and we swing by it and pass through it and move on, and with a sort of fleeting glimpse of it. It's not resolved, it's just like we've witnessed part of it and now we've moved on and we're wondering what happened there, what's going to happen, what was the resolution. Why did you choose to do it that way, Beneath?
So when I received the invitation, I sat down and I thought, I was like, well, how am I going to attack this story? And quite often when I'm invited to do things, I always look back at old work. And so I had this novel that I wrote umpteen years ago that was sitting in my computer, and it took place in a rural town. I went to school in Pennsylvania, in this rural town in Pennsylvania. So that's the town I had in mind, Danville, Pennsylvania. And I went to an all-girls school, and it was we call it one-horse town. It was a main street, and just really very, very simple place. And in my story, the original story, these children kept coming up missing. And I don't think that I was able to figure out while I was writing that novel who was snatching the children. But then I had to move forward into contemporary times if we have these children that are going missing, especially up in Chicago. Chicago is what I was thinking about. That was the city I was thinking about. And I was like, well, who would these children turn to and find safety in? And those are the people I decided would be the ones snatching the kids. Because it usually works out that way. Yeah.
Yeah. It was I was so happy to have it in the anthology, and because it's subtle and it's nuanced. It doesn't necessarily spell things out, and it doesn't necessarily wrap it up with a neat little bow. It felt to me a bit like you're passing through a city and you read an in-depth newspaper story in that morning's paper, and so you know the outline of the issue, but then you fly somewhere else and you're always wondering what happened, and so it's going to affect me, that story, because I need to know what happened. And you didn't tell me. So.
And as you say, Lee, the brands of cigarettes, the brand you smoke says so much about you, and I like how true cigarettes, and I think you were the only one who used clove cigarettes in the anthology. I might be wrong, but I love that kind of survey of the world and the variety of cigarettes.
Me too. I made a note to go back actually and try and pick out, does that give us some clue and structure as to who's good and who's bad based on the brand? Because, I totally take your point about Marlboro Lights versus Red Marlboros. There's a gigantic cultural difference there, not just a gender difference, but a whole cultural difference in the L&Ms, of course, and the Newports. These are signifiers that we need to pay attention to, really.
Absolutely.
My story I did in the usual way that I do, which is, you say, yeah, I'll do a story, and I have a one iron rule that I apply with discipline, that I write a story in one day, preferably one evening, usually the day before deadline. Because I need that kind of focus, and I do warn people in advance. I mean, I've said this to Johnny many times, that yes, I'll do a short story, but there's a clue in the name. It will be short. Because I like that. I always aim for 2,000 words, but it usually comes out to about 26 or 2,700. And that's about long enough for me. And I just do it based on, I know the theme, obviously, but I do it based on what happened to me that day. And so my story is about a screenwriter getting an email with notes from the producers, and I guess that happened to me that day, or I'd been on the phone with them or something, because I have this weird thing with short stories where I know happily that lots of people are going to read the novels, and that brings with it a certain weight and a certain responsibility, but I have this complete delusion in my head that I write a short story and nobody will ever see it. It's entirely private. And that's a good thing in a way, because I love to be able to do something that I don't normally do. Reacher is a big, tough guy who will never really be defeated. And for these short stories, this one in particular, is a guy who is defeated. He's a weak guy who is manipulated and defeated by everybody in the story. But he ends up happy, so at least it has a Hollywood ending.
I thought it was one of the most interesting pieces of work that I've read of yours, actually. And it's funny what you said about Robert's piece being kind of a compact novel. I kind of had the same reaction when I read your piece. You guys too, Robert? Yeah. And can we talk a little bit about? I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a climactic scene in your story, Lee, where the cigarette represents the ultimate freedom, and I don't know. I'm not sure how to frame the question without giving too much away.
Well, yeah. I mean, I tried to slip in a little piece of propaganda that, I mean, nicotine is horrendously addictive. I can absolutely witness that. I've been able to give up several other things, but never nicotine. It feels to me like this warm velvet thing that, as it's going down, but if you try and pull it out of yourself, it turns into a barbed fish hook. You will just never get rid of it. It's addictive, but it's also pleasurable. I love doing it, and I'm completely self-aware why I do it. It is the only person in my family that ever smoked was my grandfather on my mother's side, and my family was horrendous, just the most awful, repressed, boring people, except for him. He was a real human being. He drank a little. After work on a Friday, he would have a couple of bottles of beer. He gambled a little on the horses, and he smoked a lot, and he was just a lovely guy. So for me, the smell of a cigarette is love and acceptance. And I've always been aware of that, and that's why I do it. To me, it reminds me of warmth and affection, and I just really enjoy it. So I wanted to make a point in the story that, it ain't that terrible. It's not the worst thing you can do. and therefore to get killed over it is sad. You know, it's a small human weakness, and we shouldn't be so nasty to each other about it. That's how I feel.
How about some of the other stories in the book? Would you like to point out a few of those maybe and talk about them?
Well, you know, that's like I said, there are 15 contributors alongside me, and we chose them very, very carefully, and they're all good. Hannah Tinty, do you know Hannah?
Yeah.
She is, hers was absolutely terrific. I loved that. Jonathan Ames, and we did a thing, I can't remember what it was for, but we did one of these things, and he was the guest. And he told me that doing the story had kick-started the idea for a novel. And so he actually has gone on to, and he's sending me a copy. It's a novel with cigarettes in it, which is got to be excellent. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I mean, they're all good. We've got Joyce Carol Oates. We've got, it's all good. I'm not going to pick out individual stories. That's not fair if the person is not on the show with me. But, and there's enough to talk about with these two.
Absolutely.
So buy the book, and even if you don't smoke, you'll like it. Because the actual book doesn't smell like cigarettes or anything like that. We thought of doing scratch and sniff, but we figured that would be overcomplicated.
But you can get it in hardpack or softpack.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a hardcover. All I got so far is the soft cover, but the hardcover looks great.
Mm-hmm.
I should say too that I don't mean to be rude with my phone here, but I'm kind of going solo right now, and so I'm looking at questions that may be coming in from Facebook. So I'll pop up if we have any. Somebody mentioned it for the next volume, LSD Noir, or the LSD Chronicles, which sounds, you know.
That I could do. Yeah, I could
do. Maybe hallucinogenics Chronicles. You could put in a little peyote here and there. You know, there's all kinds of opportunities.
Why do we like it so much? It's I mean, I have a theory about that too, which is that I remember as a kid, and I remember my kid doing the same thing. They do that thing where they spin around until they get so dizzy they fall over. And why? There must be some human instinct towards altering your consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And for another thing I did an essay for somebody last year, and opium came into it. And you know, opium smoking has been going on for at least 5,000 years. Archaeologists have found sites with opium pipes and prepared opium 5,000 years old, or maybe even more. So we've sort of evolved with it, we've grown up with it, we like doing it. I mean, Bernice, why do you smoke? Did you start young? See, I think people should start when they're adults, because then they've got time before it's damaging. But presumably we all start as kids.
Yeah, I started young. Guess high school, and stealing my parents' cigarettes, and then I guess I started buying my own when I was in my 20s. And I went through, you know, Marlboro Red and Newports and Marlboro Lights and Parliaments, I think, and then these American Spirits.
Right.
But I'm cutting back.
Which color, Bernice?
Yellow.
The lights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to smoke the blue, the light blue ones.
And they're organic or something, right? With no additives?
Yeah. They're organic.
The healthy cigarette at last.
The healthy cigarette. Yeah, that's how I started. And, you know, I'm the eldest of 4. I smoke, and the baby boy smokes. The 2 middle children do not smoke.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I'm one of 4, and I'm the only one who smokes.
What do you smoke?
I smoke Camel Blue.
Oh, my father was a Camel smoker, the filterless kind.
Yeah, well, that was my grandfather. He was British in England, and he, a lot of tobacco brands had names that were related somehow to the Navy. I don't know why, but he smoked what they call capstan, you know, and they had a symbol of the thing on a ship that you turn around to drag in the lines. And he smoked capstan full strength, unfiltered, 3 packs a day.
Ooh.
And his doctor eventually said he should, you know, cut down. So he switched to capstan medium, unfiltered, 3 packs a day, and lived till the age of 83. But at the end, he was hilarious. At the end, he sat in a chair in his living room most of the time, smoking, and up the side of his face, he had a nicotine stain, and
Oh,
on
wow.
the ceiling above him was like mahogany colored, because those were strong cigarettes.
Yeah.
Robert, I'm guessing you're more of a connoisseur of a fine cigar or something like that.
That's kind of where it started. And in fact, it gave me license to feel okay about tobacco and nicotine from an earlier age. My first trip to Cuba, my parents left Cuba before I was born, but I was the person in the family who began to go back. And since then, both my sisters also have visited Cuba. But the people who first gave me their own hand-rolled cigars said, you know, you Americans have really corrupted this wonderful thing. You treat it like an addiction and a compulsion, but if if you're just smoking a cigar or two a day, it's more like a relationship. And in fact, it holds true. I always love bringing good cigars back, and I've been back to Havana 12 times now, and in the past 20 years, and telling people, try this. It's a bit different. Everything from the way you smoke, right? Not inhaling and just kind of holding the smoke in your mouth, to the amount of time it takes, and to the nicotine slowly, like the tide, sort of coming onto you like an understanding, as opposed to that spike to your brain of the first couple of puffs of a strong cigarette.
I have tried to like cigars, but they're just too much for me. The quantity is too much. You get habituated to the duration of a cigarette, and then you do that with the cigar. You still got like 8 inches to go, and it's going to totally kill you. Have you ever tried it, Bernice? Cigar?
I'm not a fan of the cigar at all, but I do like the smell of a pipe tobacco. I love that smell.
I smoke weed in a pipe because I'm, all fingers and thumbs. I'm a terrible roller. So yeah, and I tried smoking a pipe when I was younger, trying to sort of look serious or look intelligent. I thought that might help.
Right.
But I enjoy pipes, but it's a lot of trouble, constantly having to dig it out and keep it alight and all that kind of thing.
I'm revisiting the autobiography of Malcolm X, and so I'm listening to it at this time around, and he's talking about one of the characters up in Harlem who used to smoke his weed out of a chicken bone thigh. I was like, well, that's fascinating.
You come across details like that in Chester Himes too a lot. Yeah.
I'm gonna try that next time I have a chicken. I'm gonna hold on to that bone.
Bernice, I have a question for you. I found that having done a couple of these collections, that sometimes approaching writers that don't normally write inside this field, or don't write crime fiction per se, I found that as putting together an anthology, sometimes the most interesting pieces would come, like I had a Navajo poet named Laura Tohi write just a wicked, weird, skinwalker-themed noir story in Phoenix Noir. Did this exercise kind of whet your appetite to write another, more of a straight-ahead crime novel?
I don't believe in the boxes. I feel like I could write anything given the opportunity and the chance. So, yeah, I might. Never know.
Well, I thought the short story was definitely it was a crime story, but it had social realism. It also had some challenges in it as to which missing kids were getting the reaction and which weren't. So I think inevitably novels are always a mosaic of maybe there's a structure that looks like crime, and crime really is a good place to find social realism. I've spent this year being a judge for a very prestigious British literary prize, and I've had to read 162 novels of that nature. And I mean, they were all terrific novels, and a lot of them set in the past, a lot of them set in the future or whatever, but very few serious novelists these days are really tackling social realism and kind of defaulting to the popular genres in a way. Maybe by defaulting to sci-fi. I mean, we're seeing a lot of sci-fi that is actually about what's happening today. So I think, everybody, I like what you said, that, it's not about boxes. You write what you feel, and there's going to be a balance of stuff in any book, and it depends on what is the preeminent strand, I think.
Right. Absolutely.
There is an energy, as you were saying, Lee, it's, you can really find out a lot about what's going on in American cities, kind of at the street level, through crime fiction, perhaps in a way that isn't always there in other kinds of writing. But I agree with you. I'm anti-box myself too.
Yeah, I think Robert's story is an example of that, to be honest, in that that's not a city, that's a small place, but the niceness of the people, the niceness of the place, and the congeniality of the people suddenly revealed to be not quite what it seems. That's an eternal American story as well.
Sure.
Robert, do you plan to? What do you have cooking next?
Oh gosh, I could write more about Robbie Relleno, and we'll see about that. It's funny, you made me realize that folks have been commenting in the Facebook Live. They seem like they're voting on the next title. There's a lot of votes for LSD.
Yes.
We really touched a nerve. I know. I hope Johnny's paying attention. I'm tempted to go on a little vacation, and in fact, what Lee was saying, I feel like these days, the city-based noirs that the Akashic series does such a good job at, and Patrick, I have to say, it was my last year in New Mexico. I spent 7 years in New Mexico. That Phoenix Noir came out, and I thought it was just fantastic. And that was when a lot of them came out that year. And for me, Phoenix was kind of like, oh, that next door city just 500 miles away.
Well, thanks so
from
much.
Santa Fe.
Yeah, one of the things about Johnny's approach that I'm sure you'll agree to is that he's very upfront about, I want this to be an accurate or vaguely accurate representation of your community. I don't want it to be a bunch of white dudes, So I tried very hard to go into the different neighborhoods and at least try to find writers who were, accurately showing that. It was a lot of fun, I must say.
Patrick, all I can say is I hope that Phoenix Noir was not an accurate depiction of Phoenix, Arizona, otherwise nobody will ever go there.
It's much worse now. It's much worse.
I mean, probably noir must move away from cities now, because cities are really weird right now. I mean, I'm in New York this week because I needed to come and do some stuff, and it is weird here. It is like a ghost town. Normally one day a year, which is Thanksgiving Day, it feels like this. No people, no traffic, nothing much going on, no noise. We're not going to be writing novels about cities until they get back to what they were.
It's interesting. The first book I've read actually that deals with the pandemic is Michael Connelly's upcoming book. And it's interesting because he doesn't really, it's just kind of going on in real time in the background. All right, Leaves the first one to light up. All right.
Well, I figure, first of all, we're distance, and secondly, we're talking about the Nicotine Chronicles,
That's right.
So why not?
That's right.
So,
Yeah. I'm expecting, who's the first to use a Zoom meeting in a crime novel? You know, a lot of opportunities there, huh?
Yeah, a lot of clues and details in the background. At the beginning of all of this, I hated Zoom. I just thought it was clunky and awful and difficult. But I've really come to love it because you can see into people's homes, you can see into their lives, and a lot of people, I suppose, tidy up or something. A lot of people don't. Uh, stuff is, you can see something in the background. You think, what is that? Why is it there? I'm loving Zoom, to be honest. It's really I've really come to regard it with great affection.
It's a voyeuristic medium, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. And some of the conversations I'm finding, you know, because we're doing so many of these now, I'm finding the conversations can go off in very interesting directions, you know, that might not when you have a live audience in front of you. I mean, it's both are great, and we do miss the energy of the live shows. But I'm with you, Lee. I'm really, it's good for a kind of a antisocial introvert, you know.
Yeah, really good. And I find it takes a bit of inhibition out of disagreeing, which, you know, because I've been doing this Booker Prize judging and there's regular Zoom meetings to that. And, you know, you can say things that you might not say if you were face to face. There might be a politeness or a deference about it, but because the interface is relatively clunky, you don't really know when one person has stopped and another is starting. You can just say what you want to say. And I've enjoyed that.
I do have, there's a question or two coming in from the audience here. Wow, here's a big one. Alan asks, not including any of your own, what is the best book each of you have read? That's a tough one.
Like,
go for it. You look like you got an answer.
oh my goodness. I can't, that's so difficult. The best book.
How about a couple? How about a handful?
Okay. Beloved, The Color Purple. That's reaching back recently because I've been reading a lot of nonfiction. All in Love with Cass, Isabel Wilkerson. Just Us, Claudia Rankin, and Memorial Drive, Natasha Trethewey.
Cool. All right. Give people time to write that down. Robert, what about you?
That's so hard. It's really difficult, and I can only thank you, Bernice. It gave me a few ideas too. I'd rather just say the first one that really just blew my mind and made me want to stick with the novel and writing that genre for as long as I could was The Palm Wine Drinkard by Amos Tutuola, who also wrote My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. It was just such a wonderful, refreshing understanding of the English language from someone who wasn't a speaker, a first language speaker. And more recently, just something that blew my mind and kind of really shaped my whole summer, and it just happened to be handy, and it's an Akashic book, is The 5 Books of Robert Moses by Arthur Nersessian. He's one of the first novelists or authors whatsoever that Johnny Temple and Akashic published. And when I had my first book published by Akashic 20 years ago, Arthur blurbed it, and this clocks in at 1,306 pages. It's separated into 5 books. It's apocalyptic, it's prescient. You know, he worked on it for 20 years, and it's all those things. I feel like it really reinvents what the novel could and should be. What about you, Lee?
Well, I mean, when I'm asked for a novel recommendation, you know, the best novel that I ever read, I really can't get past Sophie's Choice by William Styron. I always say, if you're only going to read 5 novels in your life, make it that one. Because it really is 5 novels. It's a Southern novel, it's a New York novel, it's a European novel, it's a World War II novel, and it's a fantastic suspense novel. But it is done in a very patient and languid style. And therefore, it teaches you a lot about suspense, and it teaches you a lot about discursiveness and just that patience. And I had a lucky encounter. I did a literary festival down in Palm Springs, California, and it was hilarious. You know, Palm Springs is one of those communities that is just unbelievable to me, and I didn't really. I didn't want to do that one, but I didn't really want to do anything at all. So I told my assistant just to turn down everything that was coming in. And so unbeknownst to me, she turned down this festival, and they really wanted me to go. So they said, one of the sponsors was a local prestige auto dealer. And they said, if we gave him a brand new Rolls Royce for the weekend, would he come? And so at that point, she asked me, would I go? And I said, yeah, okay, I'll go. And it was full of people like, you know, millionaires and billionaires and people that I'm just totally not used to. But I met Rose Styron, William Styron's widow. I also met Herman Wouk, and that would be and he was like 101. That would be a recommendation to The Winds of War and War and Remembrance, I think are fantastic historical novels. But Sophie's Choice, I just loved it. And Rose told me that he was working on something else, but he had a dream one night and came down in the morning and threw away what he was working on and started anew. And that's what we got. And nonfiction, there's a book that stuck out for me. It's called The Lost by Daniel Mendelsohn, who is really a classical scholar up at Bard College. But he's a Jewish guy and grew up in New York. And when he would be taken down to Florida to meet the old relatives for the holidays or whatever, he would, as an 8 or 9-year-old, he would walk into the room and they would all burst into tears because he so resembled the only one of the family that had not gotten out of Europe in time. And so Mendelssohn did this. He was obviously haunted by this tale, and he did what is the first of what people are calling third-generation memoirs. In other words, people writing about their grandfather's generation generally, their grandparents or their great uncles and aunts or whatever. And he set himself to find out what had actually happened to this guy and his family. And again, it was a rumination on storytelling, on history, but a fantastic detective novel. He hunted down the truth and found out what happened, and it was pretty awful, but it's a tremendous book.
The Lost?
The Lost, yeah, by Daniel
Mendelbaum?
Mendelssohn.
Mendelssohn, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, this, and we should probably wrap it up here, but this year, it's, I feel kind of bad for people that have had new books come out during this whole pandemic, but at the same time, it's been a really interesting year, and there have been some terrific books that have come out this year. I don't know, just so many good ones. I'll just give you a few shout outs real quickly. Some of the ones I really liked, which Ivy Pakoda's book, These Women, I thought was kick-ass. I always love recommending Percival Everett. You know, he has a new book out called Telephone, which is just wild. And talk about an author who does not do the same thing twice. I always pay attention to what he's doing. The Distant Dead by, oh my gosh, Heather Young, I believe. Sorry, Heather, if I blew your name. That's a killer. Wonderful thriller by Sean Cosby called Blacktop Wasteland. I just recently did an event with him and loved that book. Denise Mina's new book, The Less Dead. I mean, just all kinds of great stuff coming out right now. Very exciting.
I'm going to jump in here and say to everybody watching on Facebook, I first met Patrick 22 years ago, and he was totally enthusiastic about books. And here he is 22 years later, still as enthusiastic. This is what is so great about the independent book trade in America. The people you see in the store, they love this stuff, they know this stuff. You cannot be better served. And the real tragedy of this year is the lack of footfall, the lack of live events in the stores. I know that Poison Pen is one of the most vigorous and intelligent marketers there are, and I'm sure Poison Pen will survive. But anybody who cares about books or reading, the next time, don't just order it online. Put on your mask, go to a bookstore. You're only in there 2 minutes. Run in, grab the book, pay for it, and run out. We need to keep that sector going.
Thank you so much for saying that, Lee. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, independent bookstores all over the country, you know, they're so important for the, you know, just for the intellectual life of any city. And it's really, I also miss live music, you know, so much. And I feel bad for so many of my musician friends. Oh wait, one more recommendation. Willie Vlautin. You know his work? V-L-A-U. He's an Oregon writer. Absolutely brilliant. And I just got his new advanced reading copy. And William Boyle, that's my last one, City of Margins.
Great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, well, anyways, I'm just seeing everybody's, seems to be...
Do we have a consensus about LSD?
I think so.
LSD, yeah.
Robin asked.
That sounds like a great one.
All right. Johnny, that's the next one.
That's right. But hey, thanks so much, all three of you, for spending some time with us tonight. And I think the virtual launch of the Nicotine Chronicles, I believe, or at least among the first events. So it's an honor to have you all here, and best of luck with the book. Keep on smoking.
Yeah.
Thank you to Denise and to Robert, not only for their stories, but for being here tonight. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thanks,
Stay
everybody.
safe. Have a good one.
Good
Take
night.
care.
Peace.